So today's theme was collaboration, and so Senator Daniels and I decided that we would do a joint interview on what today's theme was. And when we talked about collaboration, we talked extending beyond government lines, beyond party lines. We recognize that Bermuda is going through quite a lot right now economically, with public safety, and so you brought up the collaboration theme today, and I thought that was rather relevant. And I think, in fact, every senator then responded to that, and I think that's appropriate. So, what do you have to say about that, Mark?
Well,
Senator Daniels?
Yes, Senator Barron. Essentially what I was saying, though, on the issue of collaboration was just looking at some of the themes that have taken place in the media of late. When I look at some of the comments from the chairman, let's say Thaddeus Hollis of the OBA, I've seen some news excerpts where there's been schoolyard tactics, pit bull tactics, and things of the like. And these are comments I said in the Senate about how the Progressive Labor Party is actually dealing with issues and the government's business in the House and in both sets of chambers. And effectively, the position that we were taking is that the opposition is not opposing for opposition's sake, but we're actually fulfilling our mandate and our duty. We have to criticize, we have to offer solutions, and we have to poke holes where we see fit. I was saying that the OBA government did a fantastic job of doing that type of work when they were the opposition, but it seems now that they're the government, they don't like to get punched as much as they like throwing the punches before. On the issue of collaboration, really what it was about was just saying that, of course, we're not always going to see eye to eye. We're going to have differences of opinions, and at the end of the day, we function in a way we're trying to persuade our different ideals on society as a whole. But when it comes down to the language that we use, both sides have to learn, both sides have to step up, so it's not one-sided at all. But I think that more work has to be done in terms of getting the people's business done. And so with this new session, it's new and innovative for us to have to come back, but I think all of us are renewed and regenerated and excited to actually continue with the work that has to be done, because there is an urgency. But I was saying that I'd like to see a little bit more brought to the table at this stage, which is going to ultimately see more benefit for the little guy as well as big business.
All right, so now that I have the microphone, I'm going to pull it over to me. Now I think what we can agree on is that everyone in Bermuda, whether you're a PLP supporter, whether you're OBA supporter, everyone needs to, or you're in those parties and you're an active member of the government, we all really need to lean forward and look at what our problems are. Because you asked someone on the street what your main issues are with Bermuda, with government, they're going to talk about what's in front of them. They're not going to talk about big business. They'll talk about not being able to pay for their Belco bills. They'll talk about crime in their neighborhood. And so these are things that we need to touch them on and collaborate with them as well, not just to get public buy-in, but also to get their support and to get their feedback on how we need to collaborate and come together so that we can, as a government and a loyal opposition, create collaborative solutions with the public and with one another. The analogy, we have the advantage of sitting in Senate, which I think is much more of an intimate setting. And the analogy I used before was sort of eating around the table with your family, and then, or as opposed to going out with your family to a large restaurant. And so it's bigger. There's a lot more people involved. Obviously, more press, Hansard, etc. So there's a different tone. And when you're sitting around the table in Senate, I find that we are. Sometimes we butt heads, but in a much more respectful way, if I can say. And I think it's because of that intimate setting, and it's because there are 11 of us around the table, and that I get that the point, like the morning prayer says, I get that we are there to advance peace and prosperity for Bermuda. I'm not doing these for votes. I'm not doing this for anything else. But I think I can do something positive for the community with Senator Daniels' help, and that's what the to and fro is all about for me.
I would just say that as it relates to the work that's done in the House, I think that there's also a history of the adversarial nature. We have a Westminster system, and there's been a history and a tradition of also the theatrical. And so I think we also have to bear that in mind, that we've got decades of a practice of this theatrical nature and approach to politics. Ultimately speaking, though, when we are looking at the issues, when you have much more time to speak on issues and the approach that's taken, it's going to be an approach of challenging the legislation and the language that's being used, but it's also the issues and ideals themselves. And it's going to inflare passions. And I think at the end of the day, that's something that's a part of human nature. Egos are obviously involved. Egos exist for all of us. We're here to do work. But at the end of the day, we're also trying to make our points clear. And in that, there's an honesty in that you're trying to trump out somebody else's point. At the end of the day, we are trying to put forward our message and our agendas on both sides of the divide. So there's always going to be that contentious nature. And at the end of the day, it's just going to come down to the individuals and the characters that go before the House, and the people make their judgments accordingly. As it relates to the blogs, I think that, again, you're talking about human interaction and human politics. People look at issues passionately on different sides. And so whenever you're going to have those different variances of opinions, there's going to be a natural inclination to butt heads. And sometimes I think that we haven't exercised the political maturity yet to look at issues in frank nature and to look at the historical context of how we've got to certain positions and then chart our course going forward. But it's human interaction and it's human evolution. So all we can do is play our part to try and encourage the best out of us. And when we have to go there, we will scrap. At the end of the day, it's about the messages that we're trying to achieve and what our agenda is.
And I think some of the advantages of the blogs, because everyone focuses on the negative, and I'll talk about that as well. Some of the advantages of the blog is that there are a lot of people who want their opinion to be said, but they don't necessarily want their name attached to it. And so, they can make anonymous statements. So when Gingerman58 says, "I don't like Jeff Barron, I think he's whatever, a poor senator," that doesn't hurt my feelings, but that person is able to express his or her opinion. And so there's an advantage in that, and we're able to tease out a lot of information from the public on how people feel about policies and procedures. And now, being a politician in a digital age, it's so important that we're not just scanning blogs, but if you have a conversation in the Senate, it's out on Facebook and Twitter within the next hour. And so really, contemporary politics calls for you to at least respect the blogs, because they're there, they're not going away, and so we need to be able to work with them. Now, some of the comments are very hurtful and distasteful, but that's really for the news media and outlets to manage as well. You can't get too bogged down. You have to have some thick skin to do this job. I think there's an advantage to the blogs and there's a disadvantage to that. So, most of the disadvantages is really for the news media to manage, and not for a politician to take personal.